This is Gemara in Gittin Daf Pei Beis is Baruch Hashem. We begin the final parak in this long journey of Gittin B'siyata D'Shmaya. But don't be nervous. After Gittin comes Kiddushin Baruch Hashem. We're going into the positive. So says the Mishnah Pei Beis Amid Aleph, beginning in the 9th parak. Hamigarish es ishto, one who divorced his wife. V'amar Allah, and says to her, Hareya mutares l'chol adam. You're permitted to everyone, which of course is usually what a get does. Ella l'ploini. But he adds on an interesting caveat. He says Ella l'ploini. Now what does that word Ella mean? Does that mean except for you can't marry Pliny? Does that mean you have to marry Pliny? Which will be the beginning of discussion in a moment. Rav Eliezer matir v'chachamim ma'isrim. So classical machlekes of Eliezer and the chachamim. What is the story? Again, with a woman that gives a get, with a very interesting, a husband that gives a get, and he says an interesting line, Ella liplaini. Says the Chacham Mitzaser. So Kay said, Yasa, what should he do? Yitlana imana, you should take it from her, v'yachzav yilanu la, and give it back to her. V'yemer la, and tell her what? Hareya mutares l'chol adam, you're mutter to everyone, with no strings attached. Kisvu b'saychai. If he wrote this inside of it, what did he write? He wrote this, Ella liplaini, aval b'shachazar u'mechakai puzzle. Even if he takes it back, erases that which he wrote, it is still puzzle. So this is going to be the thrust of the discussion. What exactly is this case of Ella liplaini, and how do we deal with it? So says the Gemara, beginning right on this theme, Ibayilahu. Hi Ella. When the guy gave the get and he said, I'm a garish ishtai, and he says, Ella liplaini, asks the Gemara, hi Ella, what does this word Ella mean? Chutzu oi almanasu. Does it mean chutz or almanas? And now the Gemara explains. Chutzu doesn't mean chutz. Ubechutzu depligi rabbanale. And in this case of chutz, in this case of accept, that when he says he is divorcing her, and you're mutter to everyone, you just can't marry one guy. Chutz, that's the case where the Chachamim disagree. Why? Rabban Ali to Rav Eliezer. Why? Dashayr law get. You're leaving something out. You're leaving something over. We know, as we've seen many times, hopefully in the last 80-something blot, that a get severs. A get cuts ties. Over here, you're not fully cutting ties. There's a shayara. You're leaving something over because she can't marry any person in the world. Because Pliny, she's not allowed to. Aval, however, ba'alminas. But in a case of alminas, in a case of where the husband said, I'm divorcing you, alminas, on condition you don't marry so-and-so, which again, at some levels also leaving something over, because he said you're not allowed to marry so-and-so, but it wasn't with the word of chutz, it was with the word of alminas. Then, my delay, maybe the Chacham would admit to Rav Elazar that it would still work. Because it's a good old-fashioned Tanai. Oidilma, that's one way of learning. So again, the first way of learning is that they're arguing in the case of chutz. That's where the Chachamim say it's no good. Why? Because you're leaving something over. But in the case of Almanas, it's true, she still can't marry that guy, but it's a regular classical condition. Maybe the Chacham would admit to Rav Eliezer. Or perhaps Almanasu, or maybe the case in the Mishnah of Elo means Almanas. And Ubanasu Depalik, Rav Eliezer ad Rabbanan, and now we flip it the other way. Then in the case of Almanas, that's where Rav Eliezer disagrees with the Rabbanan. Avul bechutz, but in the case of chutz, Maide. But in the case of chutz, Rav Eliezer would agree that it is no good. Why does shayr la beget? Because you're leaving something over in a get. So a fundamental shaylo, what is the case of our Mishnah? And by knowing the case of the Mishnah, we'll be able to figure out which is the case in which Rav Eliezer and the Chachamim are disagreeing, and in which case perhaps they would agree. So Amar Ravina comes like Ravina, and he answers the kasha Tashema with a brisa. Says this is a Mishnah. Tashema. Kol abatim mitamim b'negoyim. All the houses are tamei taras. They have a nega. Ella shel akum. Ella shalakum. Now, what does this word ella mean? We have the same story over here. We have a brisa that's teaching us that all houses become tamei, ella of the goyisha houses. So explains the Gemara. Now we'll be able to prove what the word ella means. If you're going to tell me that the word ella means except for Shabir, that is beautiful. That all the houses could potentially become Tamid Tzaras. Ella chutz, except for a Gaisha house. Ella, however, if you tell me that the word ella means almanas deloy mitami bate Yaakov, hu de mitami bate Israel. What would that mean? On condition that the Goyish houses do not become tamei, that's when the Yiddish house would become tamei. Ha mitami bate Yaakov, which thereby would infer that if the Goyish house would become tamei, loy mitami bate Israel. What would that mean? Why would the tama, why would the nega of the Jewish house be dependent on the tama of the nega of the Goyish house? So proves the Gemara from this Mishnah in Negayim, seemingly that the translation of the word ella is chutz. Void, and furthermore says the Gemara, aside from the fact that if it meant almanas, what would it mean that A is dependent on B? More so says the Gemara, is it even possible for a Goyish house to become tamei? V'atanya, but we learned in our brayse of Nasati nega tzaras beis eretz achuzaschem. I'm going to place the tzaras in the land of your achuzah, in the land of your possession. And from here we learn out eretz achuzaschem mitam b'negayim. Your houses of your possession owned by Jews. So it's not even possible. Ella shema mina, chotzu shema mina. Says the Gemara, we have a beautiful raya that the word ella means chotz. So now, going back and let's understand what the Mishnah said. The Mishnah said one divorces his wife and says to her, you're mutter to everyone chotz, except for a Pliny. Rav Eliezer says that's okay. The Chachamim say it is not okay. Why do the Chachamim say it's not okay? Because you're leaving something over in the get. There's a shayara in the get. But let's say someone said you are divorced. Al minas, that you do not marry one specific person. Then the Chacham would say that's not a problem. Classical condition that would not bother us. Says the Gemara, Mas Nisan Deloy Kaitano. The Mishnah is not like the following Tana, 8 lines on the bottom of Pei Beis Amid Aleph. Tanya, we learned in our brayse, Rav Yesi ben Rav Yehuda. Loinech leku Rav Eliezer v'Chachamim. They do not agree. They do not argue. Alamagarish es ishtoi v'amar la'arei mutar zechol adam chotz leploini. That case, they do not argue. She'ena migureshes. Says the brayse explicitly that in a case of chutz, there's no disagreement. In the case of chutz, even Rav Eliezer will hold it's no good because there's something left over in the get is a shayara. Al manech leku, says the race explicitly, what is the machlekes? Al megarish ishtoi v'amar lo. So divorces his wife, and he says to her, Harei at muteres l'chol adam al minas shlo tenasei leploini. The Brisa says explicitly that the case of debate between Rav Eliezer and the Chachamim is not a case of chutz, but rather is only a case of almanas. As we turn over to Pei Beis, Amid Beis explains the Gemara, Rav Eliezer matir l'chol adam chutz me'iseish. And that's the case Rav Eliezer says, you're mutter from anyone except that man. Rav Eliezer says the gerushin is good and there is no problem. The Chachamim come along and they argue. My time of Rav Eliezer. What's the reason Rav Eliezer says it's okay? Because it's like a regular Tanai. Why do the Rabbanan disagree? Say the Rabbanan called Tanai ba'al malo shayir lo beget. Every Tanai is a stipulation. Do such and such, and then the get will take effect. Over here, it's not just do such and such. Over here, there's a critical person lacking in the get, because this woman cannot go and marry anyone she wants. Lo yishayir lo beget. Whereas hacha shayir lo beget. So that says the Gemara, our Mishnah is clearly not like this Braisa. Umas Nisan. So says the Gemara, our Mishnah said they're arguing as we just proved by Chutz. This Braisa says they're arguing where? By Almanas. Explained to the Gemara, the Braisa, that is a machlokes. Rav Eliezer says the regular Tanai, and the Chachamim say no, this is not a regular Tanai because there's something lacking. There's a shayara, something lacking in this get. Says the Gemara, Umas Nisan du kimna b'chotz. My time is Rav Eliezer. Okay, but now let's flip it around. How does the Mishnah learn the case of chotz? The Mishnah in the case of chotz, in which Rav Eliezer is still saying it's okay. Why is it okay? Amar Rav Yanai, explains Rav Yanai, 6 lines down, Beis Amid Beis Mishom Zakein Echad. Says Rav Yanai in the name of a Zakein, Amar Kra. It says in the pasuk, V'yatza mi beisai v'holcha v'yisalish acher. You leave. She leaves this man and she goes to another man. Afilu and Darshins Rav Eliezer, something unique. Afilu lo itira elo leish acher, even if it only permits to one man. Harei zu migu reshes. The Rabbanan, what do the Rabbanan hold? Hayish. What does this pasuk mean? It means every single person she has to be allowed to marry. Rav Yochanan Amar explains Rav Yochanan another way of learning this pasuk. Time of Rav Elazar mehach. Excuse me. So that was the way that Rav Yanai explained Rav Elazar, that in case of chutz it's going to work. Why is it going to work? Because Rav Eliezer has a unique din that Gerushin has the effect just for one person. Comes on Rav Yochanan and he says no. You know the reason of Rav Eliezer? Mehach says in the pasuk 10 lines down, V'isha grusha meisha lo yikachu. From here we darshan afilu niskareshes ella meisha. Even if she is only divorced from her husband, still nifsala min akuna. Alma have gita. So we see if she's an apostle from kuna, must be that there is a get. V'Rabbanan, how do they disagree? Iser kahuna shiny. Say the Rabbanan, don't bring me a raya from the case of kuna. So we had a Mishnah, we had a din of Ella, we proved Ella in our Mishnah meant chutz, the machlokes in our Mishnah is chutz. Now we learned 2 reasons why in the case of chutz, Rav Eliezer said it's good, either because all you have to do is even if you only mutter to one man, or even if you only divorce from the husband. We had a Braisa that learned to not like this, and the Braisa learned that the machlokes of the Chamim is in the case of Alminas. Bai Rabbi Abba. We're about 20 lines down. The first one line is Bai. Bai Rav Abba. B'kedushin heich. What do we do about Kedushin? We started off today saying Kedushin's on the horizon. We have a little bit of a primer for Kedushin. What is the status with Kedushin in the same case? Says the Gemara. Tibai Rav Eliezer, Tibai Rabbanan. Tibai Rav Eliezer, Ad kan l'kam Rav Eliezer, Achel misham dechsivi kara. Rav Eliezer had an explicit pasuk. Aval Hasam, when it comes to Kedushin, Kinyan ma'al yabinin, you need a full-fledged Kinyan. And if it's not a full-fledged Kinyan, says the Gemara, it wouldn't work. Again, we're going with the Mishnah. We're going with the way that the chutz, that you're leaving something out. Can you leave something out when it comes to marriage? So it says the Gemara, let's ask according to Rav Eliezer. Rav Eliezer only says that over here he has an explicit pasuk, but by Kedushin, by marriage, maybe you need a full-fledged Kinyan. Aidelma, or perhaps no. V'yatza v'haisa. The one drasha we need to know very well. That what? We equate Kedushin to Gerushin. If it works for Gerushin, it works for Kedushin. That's the shayla according to Rav Eliezer. Rav Eliezer. Rabbanan. Now we have a shayla according to Rabbanan. Ad kan l'kam Rabbanan. Why do the Rabbanan say over here chutz does not work? Elo divinan krisus v'leka. Because it's a shayara. There's something lacking in the get. You need krisus. You need full-fledged severance. Aval asam. But over there, Kinyan Kaldu, maybe any level of Kinyan suffices. Or maybe no. Or again, maybe we equate Kedushin to Gerushin. Says the Gemara Labasa Dibayi after Rav Abba asked the Kasha, Hadar Pashta, Rav Abba came along and answered it, Bein le Rav Eliezer, Bein le Rabbanan, Beinan v'yatza v'haisa, and therefore the same din by Gerushin is going to translate over to Kiddushin. Amar Abaye, comes along Abaye, wants me to know this din of Rav Abba, that v'yatza v'haisa, says Abaye, Intim Salaymar Isla de Rav Abba. If you're going to hold of Rav Abba, the following will happen. Ba Reuven v'kitcha chutz mishem, Ba Shemin v'kitcha chutz me Reuven. What happens? Reuven marries a woman and says, you're married to everyone in the world aside for Shimon. Shimon comes and says, you're married to everyone in the world aside for Reuven. So it's an interesting thing because Reuven married her, but with regard to Shimon, she's an unmarried woman because it was chutz. So when she goes to Shimon, theoretically she can marry him. And then she says, I'm marrying you to everyone aside for Reuven. Meisu Shneim, then they both die. Reuven and Shimon, they both die, both brothers. What's the halacha? Misyabem es l'Levi. Based on what we just said, there'll be a case of Yibam. We will not apply over here Eishes Shnei Mesim. Usually there's no Yibam when it comes from two Mesim. Over here we won't say that. My Taima. Because very simply, Kedusha de Ruvain Ahanu, Kedusha de Shimon Layanu. The Kedusha of Ruvain helps. The Kedusha of Shimon is nothing. She wasn't able to marry him. It was nothing. And therefore, does it do anything? And therefore there will be Yibam. Says the Gemara, so what is the case of Eish Shnei Mesim? If this is not the case of a woman that calling to Yibam from two Mesim, what is the case? Explains the Gemara. Kigoin, Sheba Reuven v'kitcha chutz me'Shimon, uba Shemin v'kitcha stam. So Reuven married chutz me'Shimon. Shemin married stam. The kedusha Reuven ahanu. Reuven's kedusha helps. Why? Lemeser alma, she now usher to the world. And in this case, when Shimon marries stam, kedusha Shimon ahanu, it also helps. For what? Lemesra Reuven, then now she becomes usher to her husband to Reuven, and then if they were to both die, then there would be no Yibam, because then it would be called the case of Isa Shnei Mesim. We'll stop over here. We'll pick it up from Abaye in the next year. B'siyata Dishmaya.